Hello and welcome to the final part of the videos on how to make fans, and this time I'm going to cover a Spanish and a French fan. So this one here is your Spanish fan and this one is the French one. Now the first thing that you will notice that's slightly different to the more traditional torchon fan is that with this fan you take pairs in one at a time. With this one, you start with all the pairs. So it's really crucial that you know which is how many pairs you need to take in. And the way you do that is by looking at this pin here. So what happens with this Spanish fan is you'll start with a number of pairs and you'll go backwards and forwards following the zigzag line as before, dropping one pair off at each of these pins, which will come down and go back in at the corresponding pin underneath. So in order to find out how many pairs you need to start with, you need to look at this pin here, because what happens is halfway through the fan you're going to go all the way across, taking this pair all the way back and leave it out. So the pair from here will go in and out. So once you know which pin is your widest point, you can then work back. So if this pair is the pair that comes in here, that means I need to start with everything above that. So that's 1, 2, 3 plus my 2 pairs on here. So I'm going to be starting with 5 pairs. The other thing you need to know with the Spanish fan is it's traditionally made with a cross stitch and twist. Because it's a wider, more open fan, you'll find that just doing cross stitch won't fill the area. So this is always done generally with a cross stitch and twist. So let's have a look at that on our pricking. So I've already done my ground stitch, so I'm ready to go. And I've made this symmetrical this time. So I started with 2 blue, then I've got a purple on each side, pink on each side, green, yellow, and then the turquoise. And you'll see that it's more regimental because it looks identical both sides. So again, what we're just about to add one more pair in onto our Spanish fan on this side, and this is the pin here, which is our widest point. I've moved those out the way. That's where it starts, and that's our widest point. So that's the pin that we need to know which pair comes in on, which is this blue pair. So I know that everything on the left, because I'm doing the left hand side, everything from the left of that needs to be in my fan. So if you want, you can pop a pin over there, and then we know we've got to take all of these in. So, and I need to add, I still need to add one more pair, and I'm going to add purple. So because on the previous one, I know that this one here, this pair here, is going to become my worker, because from this pin I come down to here. So any pair that ends up on the very left will be my worker. So I'm going to cross stitch and twist both pairs, extra twist on my left hand pair because it's my worker, pin up, and I have pricked this, there it is. And then I'm going to close that with a cross stitch and twist. So then I'm going to cross stitch and twist through all the other pairs, and I've left this passive in there on support pin for a minute because otherwise it's definitely going to pull down. So I reached the end, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and my worker makes my 5 pairs. My blue's over here because I know that one doesn't come into play until halfway through. So I'm at the end of my row, so I can then twist, give my worker an extra twist, pin up. Now, because I'm in really thick thread and I'm doing cross stitch and twist, you will need to give a bit more of a welly on the tensioning. The other thing I would just say is that I'm only going to be doing a couple of these, so I've just used scrap thread, so you would need to put a lot more on than I've got on mine. I'm just doing a couple to show you in the video. So now I'm going to cross stitch and twist back, so all the way to the edge. And I'm at the end of the row. Ooh, so put my twist, extra twist on that end pair, pin up, and now because my worker is supported, my worker thread is supported, I can take this support pin out and pull it down, and my worker thread doesn't drop down, so that's good. And then I'm going to hold my worker thread and just tension everything up, because it's a lot harder when you're in cross stitch and twist. Okay, so now, like I said before, I need to leave one pair off of this pin because I need to take it in at that point there, because this fan starts off thick, thicker pairs, wider, and then thins down in the middle and then gets wider again. So now I'm going to cross stitch and twist back, and I'm not taking in my pink thread because I've left it out. Extra twist, pin up, and you can see how open this fan is, and if you were to do it just in plain cross stitch, you would need to have a substantial number of pairs. So I'm going to cross stitch and twist back through all my pairs to the other end, pin up, and tension everything again. Now you do tension more when you're doing cross stitch and twist because you've got so many twists involved. Okay, so I've closed my pin, and I've now need to leave out my green pair because, as you can see, they go straight down. So I'm just going to go back through my yellow, cross stitch and twist, extra twist on my worker pair because that's what I'm now doing constantly. So then I'm going to go back to the other side, following my zigzag line, extra twist on my worker, pin up. So you can now see, how open this is, and if you were to do it in cross stitch, you would probably need at least another 4 or 5 pairs just to fill in these gaps here. So now I've reached the middle of my fan. I don't know if I can show you this, but so my worker's over here and it needs to come all the way over to this pin here. So I'm going to go all the way through all of the pairs that I've left out. So cross stitch and twist all the way through the 2 pairs, the green, the pink. And then I'm going to take in this pair here, which is the one that comes in on that line. So remember your diagonal lines. So that pin has a pair coming from it that goes to here, this one here. So cross stitch and twist, extra twist on the worker, and pin up. So that's the first half of my fan done. I'm just going to tension everything up. Okay, so I'm going to cross stitch and twist back through all of my pairs. At the end, extra twist, pin up, give everything a bit of a tension. Right, okay, so from here I'm going to have to dig underneath all my threads now. I'm coming to this pin here. So I don't want to take in my green because my green is going to come in on this pin and my pink is going to come in on this pin. So they're opposite where they got left out. So I'm only going to go through all of my pairs till I've gone through my yellow. So that's through my purple. So we're basically doing the reverse of what we did at the start. So that's my 2 pairs. Now if you do go through one more pair, let me just show you, and then pin up, and I have got a pin here. Oh, there we go. Can you see how that's then distorted this green line? because this green line needs to go in here. I know normally we've been dealing with diagonals, but we've also been dealing with straight lines or straight diagonal lines, but this time it's a straight line. So this one here, although it's going diagonally and you think it might be right, it's not. It needs to go straight down. This is just some thing with lace that I love, because you just think you've got it all sussed and then it changes the rules. So if you put this one in here and then put this pink one into here, because we're still taking one pair in or leaving one pair out on every pin, so you then take the pink in this one, the blue into that one, and then you're left with a gap here because you haven't got a pair to come down here. So we're still sort of being governed by the one pin rule, one pair rule. So I'm going to take that out. So what you're looking for in the middle of this fan, so up until this fan everything's been going diagonally in a straight line. When you hit this fan, you're going straight down, so the lines are going straight down. So the green came off that pin, so it needs to go in the opposite pinhole. So I'm at the end of my row, extra twist, pin up, cross stitch and twist back. So now the next pin that I'm going to is this one over here, and this time I can take my green pair in because it came off this pin here, which is directly opposite. So let's just work that across. Let's just lengthen my pairs. You can see this uses an awful lot of thread because we're cross stitching and twisting. So I've gone through my two. Now through my green, cross stitch and twist. Again, if I'd have taken my pink in, so that if I took my pink in, then took my blue in here, I'd still end up with no pair coming off of here. So just keep an eye on making sure that your pairs are coming in where they're meant to be. And if it just means taking a few seconds just to double check, it's worth doing that rather than having to undo it all, which can take a little bit longer. So I've pinned up, and now I'm going to close that with a cross stitch and twist back through to the other side, extra twist on my worker pair, pin up. So I'm going to give everything a little bit of a tug. Okay, so now I'm going back, let's just check here, back to this pin here, and I want to take in my pink pair, not my blue, because otherwise I still wouldn't have a pair coming off of that pin. So it's just worth making a note of where you're going to and which pairs you're taking in or leaving out. Okay, so in comes my pink and pin up. Okay, so just give those a bit of a tension, and I'm not sure I'm going to get much more out of this blue. So now I'm going to take my worker back to the other side through all of my pairs, extra twist on the end and pin up, and then you can now see, and I'm going to close that pin with a cross stitch and twist because this purple stays in on the fans. So now I have 3 pairs coming out of my fan that are just hanging around. They're not coming off of a pin. However, they are going to a pin. So the yellow one is going to this one, the green is going to this one, and the pink is going to this one. So this is going to feel a little bit strange because you're so used to, up until this point, having a pin with a pair on it, where we have a fan with 3 pairs just hanging around. This is what I call hanging around, because they're not secured on a pin and they're just hanging there. So they won't be used until I've come and worked this fan over here. So I'm just going to double check where my widest point is, and I've actually made it easy for myself because this blue was the widest point on this one, and because my colours all come down in nice lines, this blue is my widest point because it's following that diagonal line. So that's, I know, is my widest point pair, which means that all of the other pairs prior to that, to the right of that pair, go into my fan. So the first thing I need to do is add my worker pair. So here's my purple pair. So now I'm going to do exactly the same but on the right hand side. So I'm going to cross stitch and twist, extra pair on the turquoise because that's my worker pair, because my next pin is over here, so that means that my worker has to be on the right hand side. Cross stitch and twist back through. Now I know that this blue is my widest point pair, and so everything before that, right of that pair, needs to come in. So I'm going to go back through my yellow, my green and my pink. Now this is really easy because I've set it up so that I have identical colours on both sides, but just imagine if you were all in the single colour, which you will be at some point. So this is how you need to know that this one is the widest point and this pair doesn't come in, but everything else prior to that does. Because when you get into single colours, it's not quite so easy. Okay, so cross stitch and twist. Now I was just thinking I'm going to take the twists off of this. So this is just I'm just going to show you why we do this in cross stitch and twist and not cross stitch. So everything's just going to look exactly the same, other than the fact that I don't have a twist on my pairs in between. So that's my cross stitch through there, and I've tensioned up now my worker, so I can remove my purple pair and pull that down, and that's now not going to move. So now I've come back just in cross stitch because I want to show you how different it would look in cross stitch to the cross stitch and twist, and why we do it in cross stitch and twist. So I've done this pin, so I'm ready to leave that pair off. So now I can just come back through. I've left out my pink, 2 twists. Make sure you put, now if you're doing it in cross stitch and twist, you would put an extra twist on. So now back through all my pairs. I quite like this idea of making lace in the fact that you're experimenting with different stitches, because it's always worth playing because you come up with something new. Right, so now I'm leaving my green off. So now I'm going to cross stitch through. Now like I say, traditionally this one is done in cross stitch and twist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this one all in cross stitch, the first half in cross stitch and the other half in cross stitch and twist. So I've got to this pin here, and now I'm coming back to this one, which will then lead me to all the way across. So I'm going to cross stitch, 2 twists, pin up, and now I'm going to cross stitch all the way down through all of my pairs and taking my blue pair, twist my worker pair and pin up. Okay, so I've now done the first half of my fan in just cross stitch, and I'm now going to put the next half of it into cross stitch and twist, and then we can use that as a comparison as to which looks better, which one you prefer, and go from there. So I'm going to put a twist on all of these passives because we're going into cross stitch and twist. Okay, and off we go doing our cross stitch and twist. Now what I would say is, when you're working your lace, don't be afraid to try this, because then you'll see what's happening and whether you like it. And for the sake of just undoing a fan, which isn't really going to take you an awful long time to do, you will then get an idea as to whether you like it like that, prefer it in a different way. And it is basically playing with the design. And I think as adults we tend to not want to play, we just want to make and complete our lace. But by playing with your design, you make the lace more personal to you and how you like it. So I've gone back through to the other end. So my blue is going to stay off. Just going to give that a bit more of a tug. That's it. And now I'm coming to this pin here, so I only need to go through 2 pairs because the green comes in on that pin and the pink on that one. So I'm just going to cross stitch and twist, extra twist and pin up. The other thing I think is just because it's what's generally done as a rule doesn't mean it always has to be done like that. So there are certain things, like obviously the pairs going diagonally in lines, but as for what stitch you use where, that is really a personal choice. So now I'm going to go back through following my zigzag line. So I've just pinned up there, so I'm back over to here. That's it. Extra twist. That's it. Give everything a bit of a tension up. Back to the other side. That's it. And now we've got our final visit to the middle, so where we're going to pick up our pink, and then back to the other side. And pin up. Give everything a bit of attention. Oh, now I've got my pink thread hooked around this pin here. Can you see? So I'm just going to see if I should be able to maneuver it up. Because if I take the twist off, because I noticed it relatively quickly, there we go, I can lift up my thread and unhook it. So don't forget to put my twist back on, and then just close my last pin with a cross stitch and twist, and there we go. So now you can really see the difference. So in the top half we've got cross stitch, so we end up with 2 threads of the colour running side by side. There is a bit of a gap here, which is where you would add an extra pair if you wanted to fill that gap in. But then compared to the bottom half where you have single lines of colour, because you put that twist in halfway through, you know, after each pair you go cross stitch and twist, you get a much, I don't know, personally I think I prefer the cross stitch and twist, but again it's entirely up to you, it's a personal choice. So that's that bit, and then you would just carry on and do your ground stitch.